Hey, bro, thank you first and foremost for, taking some time out to talk to the audience, man. I mean, a lot of things going on in the market, and someone of your stature, Hose, I think a lot of agents out there think that it's not possible for them to get to where you are. And let's get into it, man. Let's just dive right in. Like, talk about a little bit of who is Jose? How did Jose get to where he is, which is, grossing $2 million a year in GCI and owning almost 60 doors at, you're younger than 40 and, things of that nature. Like, it took you time to get there. Talk about the level and the steps it took to get you to where you are.
Yeah. So who is Jose Morales? Jose Morales is a father. He's a son. He's a friend. He's a business person, an investor, a good human being, somebody with a good heart, somebody that wants to help people. The way that I got started in real estate is I actually struggled quite a bit at the very beginning. I didn't sell a single home for the first 6 months. And then I found some mentors that helped me along the way. And then little by little, I learned some things. Went from 0 transactions in the first 6 months to the next 6 months being able to do 9 after I got a mentor. I think one of the things that I did very well, and the first time it happened by luck, but the second time it was very purposeful, is I found somebody that was already doing what I wanted to do. There's a lot of mentors out there who haven't done what they are trying to teach you, and that was actually really big. And then I met other people like Aaron at some point along the lines. And then I just, I think what I just kept doing is I kept making good decision after good decision after good decision over a long period of time. And then what it does is it accumulates to what people see now, where it's just a bunch of small decisions practiced daily that accumulate to what is now of me.
Wow. That, my friend, is powerful. And I can share with you that is so accurate, because my journey has taken me to, I've reached success, but way later in life than you, because poor decision after poor decision after poor decision. And then I met mentor Aaron, and then it became good decision, good decision, good decision, to where it starts to stack up. So 100% how did you get in proximity to him, number one? And was he your only mentor? Because I've had other mentors to help me along the way in like a spiritual level, like an emotional level. So I've had other mentors other than him. Talk to me about your journey with that.
No, so even my first mentor, he's still like somebody that I communicate with. So my first mentor was somebody that maybe did 30 deals by himself, but he taught me like the human side to the business. I was learning scripts at that time, and I remember going on a listing appointment with him, and he was just like, look, dude, it's not all about scripts. There's another human on the other side. And he taught me like the human aspect of the business, how at the end of the day, it's a people's business.
Yes.
My dad has been a mentor to me my entire life. So my dad and my parents, I would say my dad and my mom have been mentors. They were 2 immigrants that came to this country with absolutely nothing. And they basically built maybe like 20 some rentals. I'd probably say, if I had to take a wild guess, maybe like $5 to $8 million worth of real estate as 2 immigrants, not knowing the language. So it's funny because he was my first mentor, and he taught me a lot of things growing up. We would go out to lunch. I'd help him in his business. Meaning I'd worked there, and he taught me so much, like little stories that he would tell me as a child. So he's a mentor. Aaron was obviously a mentor. I've had mentors from afar as well too. Like, I've read a lot of books, people that I've never met, people that I've never talked to in my life, that have, through either a book, a podcast, an audio, have indirectly mentored me as well too. So
yes,
no, it's been a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, and I appreciate that. That's awesome. I mean, same here. Jim Rohn has taken me to just, I can't tell you how many times I've audibled his teachings in a sauna, when I'm sitting in a sauna at the gym, working out. in my car, I used to practice net. I still trying to do sometimes net time, which is like no extra time, NET. I would practice that, and it would usually be Jim Rohn all the time. So I look at him as somebody who has absolutely impacted my life, even though he's not here anymore. So that's a powerful thing, mentorship, and like we talk a lot about it at the Elite Builders is proximity. Proximity's power, and you got in proximity to somebody that was operating at a very high level, and then something interesting happened is you were talking to him about EXP while he was mentoring you. Like, talk about that, because I left my previous brokerage of 12 years to go to Keller with him, and then within a year and a half, he's like, "Hey, bro. We got something else we got going on here. I know you just moved, but we're going to be moving again." Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I forgot to mention where I met Aaron was at a Mike Ferry event, and he was also a mentor to me as well too.
Okay.
But yeah, where I basically, so I used to joke around with Aaron, and Aaron was probably the most influential person that I've had in my life. Very good, positive role model.
Yes.
But I had this ability to see patterns and recognize patterns. And it's funny because I used to tell Aaron that I had a feeling I could see the future. And whenever I tell people that I could see the future, people look at me like I'm weird or that I'm like hallucinating or something. But what Aaron made me aware of is that it's not that I could see the future. I'm just really good at recognizing patterns. And by recognizing patterns, I could almost like say, hey, look, this is what I believe is going to happen based on this, this, and this. So when I first saw EXP, my initial reaction was in 2017. I was like, look, I'm too busy. I don't have enough time. This is going to take my eye off production. Then I started having kids. So I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And when I had kids, I was like, man, am I really going to be selling real estate till 60, 70, or 50 or whatever it's going to be?
Yes.
And I said, no, I've got to build something, an additional stream of income. And that's where EXP became attractive. But I read a book. It was called Blue Ocean Strategies. And it talked about how you can take a certain business model and get rid of all the inefficiencies, make it better, and make it a newer but better business model. And when I saw EXP, that's what I thought about. So what EXP did is it got rid of all the inefficiencies. There's no point of having a broker at each of the market centers. So it basically put 15 to 20 different brokers for the entire state. It got rid of all the physical office. It went on the cloud versus being in the physical space. And what it did is it created this more efficient type of model where everybody is connected virtually. And when I saw that, I communicated that to Aaron, and Aaron was like, look, Jose, like, this is not good, or that's not good, or this is a concern of mine, or that. And what I told them, I was like, look, we can't control what other people do in EXP, but we can control how we build elite builders. Basically, we can control what level of service we provide to our agents. So from that point forward, Aaron and I started, and other people started developing a value stack where we provide an insane amount of value towards agents that partner with us. And that was that conversation with Aaron, where we basically, I saw it early. I told Aaron like, hey, look, this is a really good model. And then eventually he saw it as well too. And once he saw it, it was game over. Like game over. Yeah.
Wow. That is a very unique talent to be able to recognize patterns. So all right. So EXP, I mean, obviously we're here, it's fantastic. And, we'll get into the intricacies of it in a bit, but I wanted to talk about what you said, recognizing patterns. I mean, I'm sure agents, sellers, the audience want to know, like, listen, there are patterns that are happening right now in the market. So let's dive in a little bit to the current housing market. I mean, you're in California. Okay. I want to say, is it Mission Viejo?
No. So it's Ventura. We're like North of Los Angeles, south of Santa Barbara. So we're like literally right in the middle of both of those.
Right in the middle. Got it. Okay. So our markets are unique. Yours is you're surrounded by you're an outskirt of a city.
Uh-huh.
I'm imagining. So are we. I can turn my head and see New York City. So what are you seeing right now? So it's 2024. We're in quarter 4, 2024. What are you seeing as far as, let's say, strategy? Well, number one, trends and predictions. Let's talk about trends right now. What are you seeing as far as current trends in your market and maybe even macroeconomically around the country?
Yeah.
What are you noticing? Patterns, rates, things of that nature, prices?
Yeah. So it's funny when people ask me like, what are your predictions for the real estate market? I think in the short term, it's 50-50. There's a lot of things that are going on in this world: elections, assassination attempts, wars, yes, nuclear. There's so many things. And at any point, something can change. And then the other part of it is optimism as well, too. So I think it's 50-50. Like in the short term, real estate market can go up, real estate market can go down. I think over the long run, real estate tends to go up in value. I also think that right now, like at least for our market in 2021, there was 9,000 sales. I'd probably say this year in our market in Ventura County, there's going to be like 5,500 sales. So our market is definitely down. And it's funny because in the worst time to be a realtor, which was 2008, 2009, 2010, 11, and 12, there was about 8,000 sales in my market. So think about it. Like in the worst time, technically, to be a real estate agent, there was about 3,000 more sales than there are right now, which means people were still buying and selling at that time. And right now it's less sales. So what I tell people is that where I'm seeing people struggle is people who are not adapting and not innovating and not changing with the marketplace. The agents that adapt, that innovate, that change with the market are the agents that succeed, and the agents that don't are the agents that get hurt the most. And I've noticed that where there's been certain agents that are used to doing business a certain way because that's the way that they've always done it. Yeah. And when the market pivoted, their businesses pivoted with it. And it's unfortunate, but what I would say to that is just, if you're constantly adapting and changing, then your business will grow. Luckily for us, we adapted very well, and we can get into some of those things that we've done if you want to. But our business is actually on pace to do the same amount of production as in 2021 in a market that's down 30 to 40%. We're on pace to do the same level of production, but we've made a lot of changes and just adapted.
I think that agents would look. I mean, trying to find clients in a tough real estate market is what agents want. So I'd say, maybe give me 3 to 5 ways that you got clients and changed and pivoted to apply to that would apply to a tough market like this.
So what I would say is our ideal client as a real estate agent is a motivated seller. So that's our ideal client. It's not a motivated buyer. You can't really grow a business working on buyers. If you're going to grow to 50, 75, 100 deals closed plus, it's going to come from the listing side. And obviously it's a more predictable, it's a more leveraged source of income. So if your ideal client is a motivated seller, you have to ask yourself, who else has this motivated seller as a client or an ideal client? And the way that I thought about it, I was like, look, investors have the same ideal client that we have. So like if you think about it, wholesalers, flippers, they have the same motivated avatar. So what my buddy and I did is we started attending, instead of Mike Ferry or real estate conferences, we started attending investment conferences, and we started finding ways as to how investors find motivated sellers. And we found different techniques. Like, for example, like investors have different lists than real estate agents do. Different real estate agents call expires, for sale by owners, just listed, just sold, and maybe absentee owners, right? Investors call probates, obituaries, tax liens, bankruptcies, just a bunch of different lists. So that's one of the ways that we adapted. We started adapting to different lists. Another way is investors have different pay per lead providers, just like realtors, whenever they want to buy leads or pay for leads, they go to Zillow, realtor.com, Redfin. Investors have their set of pay per lead providers that they attend. The difference between their pay per lead providers is that they're all for motivated sellers versus buyers like Zillow. And one of their main mechanisms is they start advertising that we buy houses for cash. So that's what we started doing. We started advertising, and we're even in the process of redrafting our entire website to say, hey, we buy houses in cash, to be able to attract people that are looking to sell. And one of the things that we did, so we copied a very similar model to investors, but then we changed our value proposition to the consumer. So why am I more attractive than an investor? I have different options for the motivated seller. So like, for example, like I have the option of purchasing the property myself. That's one of the options. If for whatever reason he wants retail and just wants convenience, I have the option of listing the property for him. I have the option of bringing in other investors and having other investors pay me a commission. I have the option of working with Open Door. Open Door has a referral program. So what I did is I basically adapted the lead sources that I did, but when I'm going on appointments against these investors only have one thing to offer them, which is a cash offer, and that's it. I have 5 or 6 different things to offer them. And what I'm able to do is I'm able to monetize more leads, which means that if I'm able to monetize more leads, I can pay more for leads than investors because I'm able to monetize them in much more different ways.
Okay. Now that what do you say to, let's say, the agent who says, "Hey, Jose, I don't have $300,000 to purchase this house," and give them that option of buying it myself? I want to do that, but I don't have that kind of money. What would you say to them?
You don't need it. So a lot of times when we're not achieving an outcome that we want, it's not a lack of resources, it's a lack of resourcefulness. Meaning it's a lack of us being willing to learn something new and learn from somebody that's already doing what you want to do. So for example, like you can wholesale a property and make relationships with different cash investors and then just make an assignment fee and they'll buy the property for you. So I have investors that I work with where I know that they're rock solid, that they're serious investors. And if for whatever reason something doesn't make sense for me, I'll just assign it to them. And then that requires very little capital, maybe enough for an earnest money deposit. And in some cases, it doesn't even require an earnest money because you assign it so fast as long as the numbers make sense. So I think it's just like learning. So one of the other things that me and my friends stopped calling each other. We stopped calling each other realtors. We're not realtors. We're real estate professionals. We understand all aspects of real estate, which includes buy and hold rentals. It includes flipping property. It includes wholesaling. It includes creative financing. It includes subject to wraparound mortgages. It includes like seller financing. So instead, we're just much more well-versed to be able to capitalize and help different people based on all the different things that we're familiar with.
Okay. That's a lot to unpack there. So I'd say first question is, okay, so you mentioned creative financing. Yeah. I'm an agent and I list property regularly. And now I have this opportunity where I can offer the option of buying the house cash, giving them maybe the price may be lower, but hey, it's a 30-day close, no inspections, no appraisals. You offer it, you get it, and that's it. And some sellers may want that. They may need to get out of the house very fast. But I don't have that. And you mentioned creative financing. How did you get started on the creative financing, let's say hard money or private money? How would an agent who doesn't know that or doesn't have that option now, how do they open their minds to that and get that in front of them? Is it the investor conferences, would you suggest?
Yeah, well, I attended an investor conference, but I think the main thing is just asking to see if somebody would consider it. And then once they consider it, then at that point, reaching out or being in a proximity around people that understand that aspect of it. But creative financing is owner financing is very simple. It's almost like like getting a loan from the bank, except the owner is the bank. And instead of, if you go to the bank, they're going to tell you, okay, this is the term of the loan, which you can negotiate with the seller, meaning how long. This is a 10-year loan, 20-year loan, 30-year loan. This is an interest only or principal and interest. This is amortized. This is your interest rate. So it's very simple to do. I think it's just a matter of asking potential sellers if they're open to it. And if you ask enough people, you're going to run into somebody that is. And that's what happened to me, that in 2019, I ran into a seller that seller financed an apartment complex to me with very little money down, 4.5% interest for 35 years. It was a 25-unit building. So once that happened, it kind of opened my eyes like, wow, like there's additional opportunities in this. And there's different ways of learning it, but it's actually not that complicated. I think it's the more advanced part is just finding people that are open to that and see the value in actually doing an owner carryback for you, basically.
Okay. So yeah, and I mean, this talks about, because you mentioned before leverage, and this kind of parlays into your leverage right now regarding, I mean, let's talk about it. Your real estate investment strategy that earns you, X amount of dollars every month. Like, this sounds like this is how you got started. You bought this apartment complex, and then did it just piggyback from there? Was that one of many that you already had?
I actually started back in the day. So my first property I bought in 2010. I bought it when I was 23 years old. Okay. My dad invested in real estate growing up, and he had a very simple rule. No education, keep in mind, didn't speak the language. His rule was if he can make $1,000 after paying the mortgage from the rents, that was a good investment for him. So in other words, he was a cash flow investor, meaning that he would do his numbers, and if the property would leave him extra, then it was a good investment. And that's the same formula that I followed. So I became what I call a cash flow investor. I invest based on the numbers, meaning how much is my payment and then how much could I collect in rents, basically. Now, what my dad didn't know and what he didn't teach me is that over time, that $1,000 would actually grow to a lot more. What I mean by that is that over time, rents generally go up and your principal gets paid down. So it creates this gap every single year that gets bigger and bigger. So like over a period of 30 years, my dad has all of his properties paid off, and he went from collecting $1,000 by 6 buildings to now collecting over $40,000 a month.
Wow.
On properties that are paid off. So that's what happens generally over time. So what I did is in 2010, I bought my first property. I bought it with $8,000 down. It was an owner occupied loan. I lived there for a very short period of time. Then I basically rented that out for $200 positive cash flow. And then my next property, I saved 20% down, and I bought a property that produced $2,000 in positive cash flow with an $80,000 payment. So I've learned a lot, meaning had I known what I know now, my real estate portfolio would probably be larger than it is right now. Because I would save up 20% down, and it's really not necessary to save 20% down. You could actually, if you buy a property at a 25% discount from whatever the retail is, a lender will actually let you borrow 75% of the value, which means you bought the property with 0% down, because the 25% discount is actually your down payment for the property.
Right.
So at that time, there was plenty of opportunities like that. I just didn't know the strategy. And that comes back to that idea that it's not a lack of resources. It's a lack of resourcefulness, and it's a lack of understanding how to play the game. And that's what I didn't know at that time. I was still able to amass a decently sized real estate portfolio, but I did it a much harder way than a much simpler way.
Yeah.
So I did it by selling lots of homes, living substantially below my means, and investing the difference.
Wow. That's a hard one. I know a lot. I mentor people too, and a lot of times the expenses part is hard. They can't. They not that they can't. They won't live substantially below their means. Yeah. How hard was that? Were you doing that with your wife, or were you doing that by yourself? And did you have kids yet? Because that makes it easier and harder.
I started off very early, and I had this go. So when I got started in the business, I had a broker, and he took me to play this game. And the game was called The Rat Race by Robert Kiyosaki. And it's basically a game that helps you understand that the whole point of investing is to have enough residual income to more than offset your personal expenses. So a lot of my early on real estate goals were to buy a rental property that produce income to make it so that if I wanted to work, I could work, but if I didn't want to work, I didn't have to. So that game meant okay, if your lifestyle is $10,000, before you upgrade to a new car, instead buy a rental property that will pay for that car. So meaning if your monthly expenses go up to $11,000, you better have about $11,000 of positive cash flow coming in every single month. And what ended up happening is a lot of my early goals were buying rental properties. And then at some point I was like, okay, I'm doing very well. And I thought about buying a Rolls Royce or something like that because I was doing so well. And then that's when Aaron kind of pulled my ear, and he's like, hey, look, you still owe money on credit cards. You do, yes, you have all this income, but hey, you should do this before you do that. And that's kind of where it changed. And then over time, what ended up happening is now I have a goal to have a certain amount of X of residual income. And once I hit that number, I'm going to stop selling real estate and transition more into the EXP and the media aspect of it, meaning do this full time.
Yes.
But I think my goals are now very focused on, hey, look, I want to be able to be in a position where if I want to work, I can. If I don't want to, I don't have to, and not live there's people that can do that, but they limit themselves so much. I want to maintain the same lifestyle that I have right now and be able to do that. So Sure. And I mean, for somebody, and for me, it would have been very difficult too. I was very younger age, earning a decent living, very materialist. So I was all about the show and the cars and stuff. And I know a little bit of your past. Was that hard for you to not make those decisions? No.
Buy the watches, buy the cars, those kinds of things.
No, I think I have a really good upbringing. My parents, if you looked at them on the street, you would never know where they live and what they have just by looking at them. So they're very just not high maintenance people. My wife and I have tried dining at super high end restaurants with friends. To be honest, we'd rather have some freaking tacos from a taco truck, so I think that we like to have nice things. We live in a nice house, we have nice cars, but it's we still are super humble relative to what we have and what we make. And
was she always like that?
Yeah, she was. She actually was. That was actually one of the things that I looked for in my wife. So like, I actually looked for, and this comes down to my first mentor, which was my dad. My dad would take me out to lunch and he would tell me, hey, what are you going to look for in a wife? And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
And he'd be
How
like,
old
well,
were
look,
you?
I was probably like 7, 8, maybe 9 at this time.
Wow.
And he'd have conversations with me about it. He's like, what are you going to look for in a wife? I'm like, he's like, this is what to be careful of. And they'd be like, look, some women, when they get home, they'll take off their eyelashes and then they'll take off all the coat of makeup. They'll take off their wig. And then you'll wake up the next day and be like, who did I marry? Mm-hmm. And then he'll be like, and then some women are, he's like, look, I've known people that make $1 million a year and spend $1.2 million and they have zero. He's like, and I've met agricultural workers that make $30,000 a year and save $20,000 a year. He's like, it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. And so he said, like, it was so crazy because he would say little things like that to me. And even now to my kids, I'll ask them, I'll be like, are you a spender or an investor? And then they'll be like, I'm an investor. That's their response. But my dad did that for me, like with investing. He did it with me for significant others. And he did it like he would have credit conversations with me. He'd be like, look, you got to take care of your credit. He's like, if you don't have good credit, he's like, you're not going to be able to borrow money. And if you can't borrow money, you won't be able to buy real estate. So like very early on, like I've had excellent credit since I was very, very young. And that was all due to the conversations that my dad would have with me. So no, I would say it was not hard for me whatsoever. And it has a lot to do with the way that I was brought up and the upbringing that I have. There was a time where I wanted to deviate from that and be a little bit more flashy. And I'm so glad that I didn't, because shortly after the marketplace shifted, and had I overextended myself, it would have been a lot more stressful at that point for me. And instead of maybe growing, maybe I would have retracted because my personal expenses would have been too high, basically.
Wow. So geez, your dad, that sounds like sounds like a remarkable man. And to be in proximity to somebody like that, I mean, my God, that's what we all want, to be able to get started early. And I mean, I didn't, my father was in banking, but he wasn't in the real estate side of it. So I didn't get that kind of mentorship. So man, that's no wonder why you pile these good decisions on top of each other. It was ingrained into you in a very young age. Is your father still alive today? Yeah,
he's still alive. Yeah.
So how did he, when you said to him, hey, I've met the one, how did that conversation? I mean, he's great. He's training you when you're young, and you obviously, you introduce your wife to him, or your girlfriend, I would say at the time.
Yeah. To be honest, like my parents weren't ever wanting to meet any of our girlfriends at all. And the reason he was like that is he's like, I don't want to meet any of them. Bring me when you actually are ready to get married, basically. Like, and even with my sisters, he was like very like old school, like, hey, I don't want to meet any of your boyfriends. You can't have any of your boyfriends at the house. You can't have any of your girlfriends at the house. He was actually like very old school Mexican, where it was like, I wasn't allowed to have friends at the house. Like even
why?
Well, his thought was, you have sisters, and like, I don't want other males inside the house if you have sisters, because I know you, but I don't know them, and I don't know what they would do to your sisters. So I wasn't allowed to even, like, if I wanted to hang out with my friends, I'd have to go outside of the house or hang out in front of the house.
Yes.
So he was a very good mentor, but there was like some things that was very restrictive from him as well too. And I'm okay with it, because obviously, like, I'm very appreciative of the way that my life turned out, and I'm very happy. But there was also like some stuff that was just restrictive,
Yeah. And I mean, look, we all have parents. Every parent's got their own little idiosyncrasy as far as different things. So, hey, I wanted to touch on something you mentioned. You mentioned that your father and you are cash flow investors.
Correct.
What other types of investors are there that maybe the Gen Pub doesn't know? I understand cash flow investor. Like, is it an equity investor? Is it like, what other types of investors would there be that they came into your orbit as you were learning how to build your real estate portfolio out?
Yeah, so I think the other type of investor is like a speculative investor, meaning that they're buying hoping that something goes up in value, regardless if it's positive cash flow or if it breaks out even. So I know people that are negative on a property $2,000 or $3,000 a month, and they're holding on to it because they're like, look, the real estate market's going to go up in prices. Like in Canada, like a lot of the people there are negative cash flow on their investment, but there was so much appreciation that they didn't care. To me, that's a much more risky strategy. And the reason it's a lot more risky is, like, let's say you lose your job today, and you don't have any income coming in, and you're got 3 properties that are negative $1,000 each on top of your living expenses. Now, instead of the rental properties helping you, they're actually hurting you. And it makes it so that if something goes wrong with your job, now you're forced to sell those properties, versus if you're a cash flow investor. Like some of my properties make $4,000, $5,000 a month positive cash flow. Right. So people ask me, what happens if the marketplace goes down? I don't care. The rents are still good. You know, so if the value went down by 50%, as long as the rent stayed the same, which they have in our area for a very long time, I'm good. You know, so and that's what I mean by that if you invest in properties that produce positive cash flow and also have the appreciation, I think that's one of the better strategies, because now the cash flow can actually help you. Like, I bought a house this year, the payments like 5 figures, just to basically put it out there. But my rental properties pay for my payment of my house because they're positive cash flow. So that's kind of the way that I've done it, where when I bought my first car, that I took a payment on. Keep in mind, when I was coming up, all of my cars were paid off in cash, and I didn't really get, I think my first finance car after I got in sales to 2015, and it was like a Mercedes E350. But by that time, I had maybe $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 coming in a month in positive cash flow. So a $700 payment wasn't going to hurt me because I had this money positive cash flow, you know? So what I would say to people is just, there's different strategies in real estate. To me, the safer strategy is investing in properties that produce positive cash flow. Cash flow,
yeah. Because it sounds like from what I'm hearing, and you can speak on this, the 4 basic needs that we have in this country, which are food, insurance, travel, and housing, your rental properties have more than covered all of those. So you're living rent-free, based off of the passive that you have.
And without having to like house hack, without having to have anybody else living in. Some people like live rent free, but they have like 4 different people living in each one of the rooms, you know? So you're able to house hack, but without actually physically house hacking. But and that's what that game Rat Race teaches you, basically. That game basically teaches you that, hey, look, before you take on liabilities or you add extra additional living things, invest into things that produce cash flow. So like, let's say that I were to decide, hey, I no longer want to sell real estate. My personal lifestyle would be paid for, as opposed to somebody else. They lose their job. They're like fumbling. They're like, oh my God, I got a $7,000 mortgage. Like, I got to go get another job ASAP. Otherwise, how am I going to pay these bills? Or they're like, hey, I got 6 months reserves. If I don't find another job in 6 months, I'm going to be in the red. And that's a very stressful situation for people to be in. And you can actually plan not to be in a situation like that if you plan it right.
How so?
Well, you just, before you buy liabilities, you buy assets that produce cash flow, or you invest in things that bring income before you buy the liabilities. So let's say you have $100,000, right?
Okay.
You can basically lend out that money as a private lender. If you didn't want to buy an asset, 8-10%, $100,000, that's what, $10,000 in a year. That's $800 in a month. So instead of buying the car and paying it in cash for $100,000 or getting it financed, you invest the $100,000. Now you have $800 a month. Now you can buy the car because you didn't get rid of your $100,000. You still have it.
Yeah.
Now that's paying for that. Now, if you wanted to be even more conservative, you basically do it where you have $2,000 and then you have the $1,000 expense, you know? So it's not like 1-to-1 where it's like 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 where the residual substantially offsets the personal, basically.
Interesting.
And if you do it that way, you could still have nice things. You just are doing a little bit of you're just delaying the reward a little bit longer.
Okay. And I'm imagining you do this too, lending out money at a specific rate.
I have one private loan right now that I have on my self-directed 401k, basically.
Okay. I mean, in the circles that we travel in, I ran into some different people that are, saying, hey, once you hit a certain number, you might want to think about making it self-directed so you can put that money to work for you instead of having it sit in jail till you're, whatever it is, 59, 60, whatever it is. So yeah, I've run into those. I didn't like the stock market. No,
I didn't like the volatility of it, basically.
I was going to say, tell me why. Because most people do. They're loving it right now.
Well, there's a good book. It's called The Banker's Code. And The Banker's Code talks about how you can be the bank instead of... You can basically become a bank. So private lending is actually a very safe way for people to earn a fixed return on their money and do so very securely. What I mean by that is like you can lend money at 12, 13, 14%, which means you're getting a 14% return on your money. But unlike the stock market where you can get 14% one year and get negative 7% the next year, if you lend it on the right property, you're always earning that 14% or that 12% because if they don't pay, then they get foreclosed on, basically. So as long as you have it collateralized correctly, you can earn a very safe return of whatever it is that you like without the risk of the downturn. So what's Warren Buffett's number one rule? Don't lose money. What's his second rule? Don't lose money.
Right.
What's his third rule? Don't lose money. So if let's say you have 12% compounded every single month without going down, your bank account's actually going up consistently at a fixed rate. With the stock market, it goes up, it goes down, up, down, up, down. So when you average it out over a certain period of time, you could be at a 6%, 7% return on your money, 8%, 9% return. Once you factor in the losses, not only that, but if you invest in mutual funds, there's very high fees in it. With private lending, there isn't like very high fees. You're the one charging the fees. So you can lend it out at 12% and you can charge 2 points for doing the loan. So you're the one charging the fees. So it's just a different way of thinking about it. Like I highly recommend that book, The Banker's Code. I think it's like a really good book that it would open people's eyes to like, oh wow, I can actually get rid of the downs and only keep the ups and have it secured by an asset at a very good loan to value or low to loan or value to debt ratio, and have it grow at a fixed return every single month.
Does the book explain how to get, like, so let's say I have 200 grand and I want to loan out 100 of it. Does the book explain how to actually get this process started and the intricacies of putting the loan against the property, getting the right paperwork, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Wow.
It's very simple. Yeah. But it does explain it. And it actually explains it very, very well. It's a great book. I had Aaron read it as well. So I recommended that book to Aaron, and once Aaron read it, he's like, wow. Not only that, but it goes over leverage and understanding leverage. It gives this example in the book, and he goes, who's the one person that never loses in the game Monopoly? He's like, is it the person that buys Park Place? He's like, is it the smartest investor? Is it the person that buys the most property? It's like, no, it's the bank.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The bank doesn't lose, because
they never lose.
They have and you can come up with your own underwriting criteria, but if you come up with the right underwriting criteria as to certain loans that you do, then it could be a relatively safe investment. But it also has to do with your underwriting criteria. So not all loans are good. There's a difference between secured and non-secured. There's a difference between the percentage loan to value ratio, So if you're lending 100% on something, the risk is a lot higher.
Oh yeah.
Than if you're lending at 65, 60%, then the risk is a lot lower.
Yeah. So, I mean, this all makes sense because I have a mortgage background too. So the question I would ask you is we're obviously now going to be catering to a different market. Your average Joe who can get a 30-year fix at a bank is going to go to that bank. They would come to us because maybe their credit's a little marginal, their assets are a little marginal, their income might be a little marginal. But usually with that scenario, one factor might be, marginal, but the other two will make up for that one. So it mitigates the risk. Is that an accurate assessment or not so much?
That, or like investors get it's almost like a hard money lender. A hard money lender will do a loan on a flip to an investor buying an investment property. So it's almost like being similar to them where they need shorter term money, like money for like a year or money for like 2 years. So it's finding a little niche that people need money and you can fund it at a relatively safe. In our area, people need money to build accessory dwelling units. So that's an opportunity because a lot of these people have $500,000 in equity, but they have a 3% interest rate, so they don't want to refinance. So you could actually lend money to them in second position at a 10% rate, and they'll pay it all day because they don't want to get rid of the 3% rate that they have. So, and you can lend it out for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, however it is that you want, as long as rates remain where they're at now,
Yeah.
But there's always people looking for money at 10, 12, 15% in different scenarios, basically.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, these hard money lenders, I mean, if you're walking into them the first time, they're going to want to see, they're not going to give you their best terms right up front.
Yeah.
You start to do 2, 3, 4 deals with them. Now you might be able to get them to finance 80%, with maybe only a point or maybe even no points, but they'll hit you on the rate. So at least where I'm at over here on the East Coast, these guys want to see a track record first before they're going to start to give you their best terms. Is it the same 100%. Where you're at?
It's same thing.
Okay.
It's same exact thing. And it's actually smart of them because when I did my first flip, there's so many things I messed up, so it's actually very smart. Now with hard money lenders, we're able to get 90% financing, which means we only got to come in with 10% down, and they charge us 1 point and maybe like a 9% rate. So it's
not even double digit rate. That's fantastic.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And then you just brought up, I wanted to get into this in a little bit, but we can talk about it now. You talked about ADUs in your area, and I know that is a big subject right now in California. So financing is obviously one of it. And look, we know macroeconomically, what is it? 60% of every loan that's out there is 3% or more below the prevailing rate right now. So these second position loans to do these ADUs, what is so great about an ADU? Why would I even want to do that?
Well, let me ask you this. Let's say I gave you an opportunity that you could buy a property for $100,000 in California, Ventura County, which is right in the middle of LA and Santa Barbara, and you can rent it out for $2,000 a month. Would you do it?
You're buying it for $100,000 and renting it out for $2,000 a month.
Yeah, would you do that investment?
I do that all day, every day, man.
That's what's great about it. So because you already own the land, your only cost is design, architecture, and construction cost. So what I tell clients when they're like, should I do an ADU? I'm like, look, let's say I were to say, I'm going to sell you a property for $100,000 and it's going to produce you $2,000 a month. Would you do it? They're like, yeah. I'm like, that's what an ADU is, because you already own the land for free, or you already own the land. All you're doing is adding additional units to the land that you already own. And that's what it costs approximately. Some of the units that we built, like 100,000, and they'll bring in like 2,000. So the way I look at it is almost like I'm buying a property for $100,000 in California, or a unit that's bringing in $2,000 a month. So it becomes a no-brainer, you know?
Wow. Why is this legal? Like, what's even this? Nobody in New York has heard of this. So what's going on?
Housing shortage. I think that over time it'll expand to other areas, because I don't think that California is the only market where there's a housing shortage. I think that it's more of a nationwide problem. So I don't believe we're the only market that has it. I believe like Oregon has it. I believe Texas has it as well too. So I'm pretty confident that there's other parts of the country. That Florida, I heard something about it implementing it soon, or already implementing it. So I think that there's going to be other parts of the country that either implement this or have already implemented it. But it's funny because like, whenever people look at real estate, they look at it like, oh my God, it's so expensive. Real estate is so expensive. But what they're not factoring in, at least in California, that like, look, let's say you were planning on putting $300,000 down payment on your house, right? Instead of putting 300, why don't you put 200? Yes, your payment's going to go up, but instead use that extra 100,000 to build the ADU. Now, instead of having a $7,000 payment, let's say your payment's $4,000. It's the same exact money. You're just structuring it differently in order to be able to pencil it out for you. And I think that a lot of times when people are looking at the prices now, there's a lot of things that they're not factoring in. They're not factoring in that. The other thing that they're not factoring in is that, and it's funny because, have you ever heard the saying that when interest rates go up, prices come down?
Prices come down, sure.
Okay. Is that true?
No.
Why not?
When interest rates come down, prices go up. Because when interest rates come down, you have more people that can afford properties. So then you have more buyers in a buyer pool. This is my hallucination. You have more buyers in a buyer pool, which means if I go and list my house, I have more people that can afford it.
But what about when rates go up? Do prices come down?
Traditionally, when rates go up, well, they haven't now.
They haven't, yeah. So,
no, they have not now.
So before this recent rate hikes, everybody would say when rates go up, prices come down. But what happened is that they went down a little bit and then they went back up, which is crazy, because right now they're higher than when rates were lower, yet the rates are high and the prices are high.
Yes.
So what's interesting is that I went back whenever I heard whenever the rates started increasing. I'm a data junkie. I went back to the last time interest rates increased, and that last time was the 1980s. And the reason I went back is I wanted to see what the impact of rates then was, because there was a point where rates went up from 7 to 18% or 16%.
Yes.
And
late 70s, early 80s.
And what do you think happened to prices at that time?
I don't know.
They actually doubled in, I think, like a 15-year period.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
What do you think also doubled?
So if prices doubled, number of transactions?
No. What doubled was money in circulation, meaning they printed out a bunch of money. And then what also doubled, or I don't know if doubled, but also went up, was wages as well too.
Oh, okay.
So what I'm saying is that a lot of times when people are looking at prices like, oh my God, prices are so high, what they're not factoring in is that there's been a lot of money that's been printed. And a lot of that money's causing inflation. So when I looked at why did prices doubled, the wages went up like crazy as well. So I think that they doubled. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that they doubled. So what I tell people right now is like, yes, prices may seem expensive right now, but I'm hearing everywhere, everybody's talking about it. Like, oh, we can't keep up with this inflation. This inflation's too much. And this is what I told Aaron a long ago. I'm like, Aaron, what's going to happen is that wages over the next 5 to 10 years are going to start to go up like crazy. And then what's going to happen, it's going to make prices permanently more expensive. Meaning that if you have a $5,000 payment right now, you're going to look back 10 years from now because wages increase, and instead of somebody earning 60, they're going to be earning 120,000. They're going to look back and be like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad I locked in that $5,000 payment because now I make 120." And this is the reason. If you talk to people from an older generation of us, if you talk to people like grandparents, there was a time where they had a $80 payment, and they asked themselves, am I going to be able to afford this payment? There are people that had an $800 payment. And if you talk to them, they'll be like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make the $800 payment. And the reason is that wages were a lot lower at that time. And over time, what ends up happening is that as wages go up, when you locked in that what seems high payment, over time, it gets washed away due to inflation. So I think that a lot of people, when they're looking at California prices or even prices in other parts of the country, they're not factoring in that you can build ADUs, and they're not factoring in that the dollar is losing so much value, and that if wages start to go up, which I predict that they will over the next 5 to 10 years go up, then when you look back and you have a $5,000 payment, you're going to be very happy that you only had a $5,000 payment.
Okay, so I'll play devil's advocate. How can wages do what you're saying you think they would do if yes, they printed a lot of money, the money doubled back then, but when the amount of money that doubled is here, it's not that big of a deal. But when the amount of money in circulation now is, I can't even put my arm up as high, it's up there. How can you raise wages like that when there's too much money in circulation right now? Too much.
When was the last time that they raised wages federally, not in California?
I don't know. It's a good question.
I think it was like 2004 to 2008, somewhere around there.
No, when you say they raise wages, you're talking the federal government.
Federal government, yeah. What I'm talking about is like the minimum wage. And some people's argument would be like, well, the minimum wage doesn't affect the median wage. It's the same argument that people would have in my market that would be like, well, I don't want to buy a mobile home because mobile homes will go up in prices.
Yeah.
It's not that. When the market goes up in prices, the mobile homes go up in prices as well too, because it's the next lowest alternative to buying a house. So the last time that they raised minimum wages, I think, and don't quote me on it, I think it was sometime around 2004, 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. Before that, if you look at it, every about 10 years, they would raise federal wages, basically. Now, in California, that's not the case. Where in California, they've raised the minimum wage, and we have a plan, I think, to get it up to $15 to $22, somewhere in that range.
Isn't it already 15 now?
Yes,
global.
Is it in federally?
I thought so.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
No?
I'll what is the federal minimum wage?
Yeah, I thought it was.
What is the federal minimum? No, I think it's just in your area, brother. So the federal minimum wage right now, let me see. Federal minimum wage right now. 7.25 per hour, basically. Yeah. So the last time the federal minimum wage was increased was in 2009. So before that,
after the crash,
it would increase. Before that, it would increase, I think, like every 10 years. So it's been like 15 years, bro, since federal wages were increased. I promise you that the wages are going to start going up, and this is how they're going to present it. They're going to say, hey, guys, We understand that inflation's through the roof. We understand that grocery prices have gone up. We understand that gas prices have gone up. We understand that it's tougher for everybody right now at the present moment. To help everybody out, we're going to go from a 7.25 an hour to $10 an hour in wages. So what does that mean, though? So what that means is that the person that was earning 10 is now going to be earning 13. The person that was earning 13 is now going to be earning 16. The person that was earning 16 is now going to be earning 19. The person that was earning 19 is now going to be earning 22 because they'll go up with it, basically. Somebody that's making $10 an hour in Mississippi is no longer, he's not a minimum wage employee, so it's going to go up over time. So, my prediction is that over the next 5 to 10 years, and you're already hearing it, man, if you really pay attention to it, and maybe now you'll pay more attention to it, but this is what I'm talking about. Remember when I told you that I see certain patterns?
Yes.
And then almost I could see things before it happens. You're going to start hearing different states talking about how it's very hard for people to save money right now because of the cost of everything, that they're going to start, that conversation will start popping up more and more.
Interesting. Basically. Guys, again, if you're an agent out there and you saw value in what we had to offer here, reach out to me. You can DM me, DM Jose. I'm sure you know where you can get in touch with him. You go ahead, Jose, throw out how we can get in touch with you.
Just my full name, Jose Luis Morales. You can find it on YouTube, Instagram, and then on TikTok, it's Jose Luis Morales 805.
Love it.
Everybody else is just full name, last name.
Yeah. Brother, it was a pleasure, man. I appreciate you very much. And hey, let's keep going. Let's go. Let's grow, bro.
Let's go. Let's grow.
Yes. All right. So, guys, we got a special guest with us today. We got the one, the only Mr. Ben Esposito. Ben is one of the top agents up in the Massachusetts market.